Welcome. Thanks for joining me as we take a look at the ghostly happenings at the Leipsic Library. First off, I want to tell you about the staircase. Now, there's a doorway with a staircase, and it leads from the circulation desk up to the second floor. And this was the servants' stairs. There's a big, solid oak door there. But this door, no matter how tight you shut it, will periodically open up. If not daily, at least on a weekly basis. Now, we've always said it's just Earl letting us know that he's there with us. Earl was the last member of the Edwards family that lived in this house. The other thing that's happened is people will say they see lights on in the second floor when the library is closed. But when somebody goes there, the house is all locked up and the lights will go off on their own. Is it Earl or is it someone else? Okay, let me tell you about a program that I tried to do in the Leipsic Library. I have done programs there before. This particular program was just about the house and the family. So I took my laptop. I had a PowerPoint presentation, so I had my projector, and I went to the Leipsic Library to set everything up. Well, I go to plug my computer in, and my computer won't work. So I think, oh, it's just the plug. So I plug it into another outlet, and it doesn't work. Well, maybe something's wrong with those outlets. I'll just run it off battery, because I had the battery charged before I'd left. So I tried to turn the computer on that way, and it wouldn't turn on. So I thought, I'm just going to leave this sit a minute. I'm getting a little frustrated. Let's get the projector set up. So I got the projector out, and I turned it on, and it worked. And then it shut down. And I turned it back on, and it shut down. And I thought, what's going on? So I go back to the computer. I finally get it to turn back on. Okay, I think we're all good. So I get the projector going. I finally get everything to stay on. So I get my flash drive that has the PowerPoint that I'm going to use. It has pictures about the house and stuff in it. So I look at that, I put it on, and I can't get it to turn on. So I take it out and I put it in a different computer, and it loads just fine. So I'm getting, very frustrated by this point. People are kind of chuckling because they think I'm doing this on purpose to kind of set up the scene for what happens in the Leipsic Library. But unfortunately, I was not. They were very kind about it and just kind of waded through. We finally got everything going. We got the PowerPoint up, all good. So I ran out into the front room, the foyer, where I was going to check and see to make sure the light that is on the cherry staircase worked. I turned the light on. It worked just fine. So I'm like, okay, good. I go back and I start my program. So I have the first slide. I try to go to the second slide, and it jumps 2 or 3. So I have to go back, and I get it back to the slide I want, and I think, oh, maybe it's this remote. Maybe the batteries are bad. So I stop using the remote, and I just use my mouse. So it did the same thing with the mouse. And I'm like, okay, let's just try the computer pad and try to just go from slide to slide that way. It kept doing the same thing. So I thought, this is going to be an interesting program because, I've done like 3 slides and I've had trouble with each and every one. So as the program goes on, sometimes it will let me do 2 or 3 slides. When I talk about the family, those particular slides seem to be worse. If I'm just showing a picture of something in the house, it does fine. But if I talk about the family, whether it's about their businesses they had, what money they gave to charity, something about them. I had trouble with each and every one of those slides. So we get to the point in the program that I'm talking about the cranberry side lights and this cherry bookcase. And this is an evening program, so by now it is dark. And so we go out there and I go to turn the light on because it's just beautiful when it's lit in the evening. And that light won't turn on. I check the bulb. I still cannot get the light to come on. So luckily, we all had our cell phones. So we took our cell phones out, turned on the flashlights, and, I showed the people when I wanted to show them about the staircase and the carved trim that went up the walls. So we go back, and I have a few more slides left, and I'm getting through them, and I get to the very last slide. Now, the very last slide is a picture of a plaque that sits on the side of the library, and it says, dedicated to the memory of William Earl Edwards, Oliver Pearl Edwards, Josephine Edwards, and Charles E. Gamper. This particular slide, I can't get it to stay. It'll come up, it'll go off. I'll bring it up, it comes off. So I say, Earl, this is my very last slide. If you just let me bring up the slide, talk about it, I'll stop talking about your family. I am not kidding you, that slide popped up, and it stayed. So I say what I want to say about the slide, I stop to take a breath, and everything shuts off. The computer shuts off, and the projector shuts off. So I told everybody there that I guess that was the end of my program because Earl has had enough of me. And everybody got a chuckle. Personally, I think that he does not like it because Oliver was his twin and Josephine was his wife. Harriet, her husband was Charles E. Gamper. And I think Earl does not like the fact that Charles E. Gamper's name is on his house. That's just what I think. So we decided that it would be fun to have some ghost hunters come check out the Leipsic Library. So Outcast Paranormal and the Toledo Ghost Hunters came one evening, and 2 lucky staff members, I was one of them, got to ghost hunt with them. So I'm going to show you some of the things that they used in our ghost hunting. Okay, right here, we have one of these. People might have these in their house. It's one of those light shows that people put on their walls, or you can put them on the outside of your house, and it has the snowflakes. This particular one has just a plain red or green dots that you can shine on the wall. And they use this to put it like staircases, or if there's some place that people have said they feel that somebody's walking through, they put this up and then they put a camera with it, and they can see if anybody walks through and blocks some of those lights. Another thing, many tripods are used, along with many computers and extension cords. But we were careful and we had those taped down. Okay, so we had cameras, full spectrum cameras, so they see a little bit more than a regular camera. We also have microphones, so we don't use the microphones just in the cameras or the video cameras. We have external ones. We also have lights. This happens to be an infrared and a UV light. I won't turn those on in case somebody has a reaction. This one is just an infrared light, so it just turns red. We have a video camera, and it's just your basic camera. We use those. We made sure that we had extra cards in case we needed them. Another important piece of equipment was this voice recorder. It is a one that you can listen to and record at the same time. So they use these and they put headphones in, and it's amazing that when it's total silence and all you hear is what's being recorded. It's amazing the little things that you hear that you normally wouldn't. Along with those, they had spirit boxes, and this particular spirit box, it checks FM and AM. And what it does, it sweeps through them at a very fast pace, faster than a word could be said. And ghosts can use some of the energy from this and speak. I'm just going to turn it on so you can listen to see what it sounds like. And it just ticks through the different stations. Now, if something is picked up, you do need to check with any radio stations that might be broadcasting in the area to see if they were talking about something that you picked up on. Okay, another important thing to have are flashlights. Because the lights are off, and typically you turn off anything that makes noise and take animals out. So no pets in the location, turn off refrigerators, turn off heating or cooling sources. Also, you can have external speakers, batteries, which played a very big part when we did ghost hunting there, for not only your lights, but also your cameras. Any equipment that you have that runs on batteries, you need spares. To be on the safe side, you should change them between sessions. Normally you do 2 to 3 sessions at a location. We happened to do 4 at the library when we did it. But you never know when you need batteries. So that way, if you start with a fresh one each time, they should be good. Okay, so now let's talk about what we found at the Leipsic Library. So as I said, they came and they brought their equipment. It was a beautiful day. We went in there, they started to lay out their equipment, and none of their computers would hook up to the Wi-Fi. Now the Wi-Fi on our phones, they work just fine. So something wasn't letting them get through. They tried everything. So we just decided that we would have to just not do it that way. They came up with another way that they could set up their equipment. So we finally get all the equipment set up and we're ready to start. So at the very beginning, they started with a prayer. Everybody held hands and they prayed, that everybody would have a safe experience. And if there was somebody there that wanted to communicate with us, that they would. And then we started and we got into different groups. Now, the other staff member was in the group that started out in the attic. I started out in the room that I did that program that I had so much trouble. So I didn't have the headphones on, and I didn't have a recorder at the time. But I asked several questions of Earl in that room. And one of them was, Earl, why did you give me such a hard time? I was just trying to show, what a wonderful family and a wonderful house you had. And as they listened later on to the recording, he said, well, aren't you glad I didn't do anything worse to you? Well, I guess Earl told me there what he thought. When my coworker went up in the attic, they didn't think that they would hear anything or that any of the equipment that they had would pick up anything. So they were very surprised when there was lots of activity up in the attic. At this point, they weren't terrified. They were convinced that someone or something was there. And it was real. Nobody was making this happen. This was just happening on its own. We down in the first floor, in the living room where we were going, we were having trouble with batteries. We couldn't keep things charged. Like, they would have to change batteries not at the end of the session, but during the session, which was very unusual. Later, the group that was in the attic, they went downstairs, and the group I was in went up in the attic. Once we were in the attic, we asked, what they could see out the windows or what experiences they were, because this attic wasn't really an attic, it was the servants' quarters. After listening to the playbacks, because at the time everything was recorded and there was a lot of things that we didn't pick up on until you listened to the recording. And one was a young man, and he was telling us about the trees, how many trees were outside, that it was kind of, like a forest, and the animals that were there. So, listening to the recordings, it was really interesting. So at the time we were up there, the other group was in the basement. I have to tell you that my coworker does not want to go in the basement again. It's not that she was really terrified, but she felt that there was a presence there that was not a good presence. She ended up going upstairs while they were in the basement. But don't worry, nobody has any issues with working there. She works there, everything is fine. But there was something in that basement, and when my group went down there, we had the same experience. Listening to some of the tapes when it played back, they talked about a slaughter that had happened. Now, what we feel happened was there was a march that went through Putnam County in the late 1790s that would have been up through Toledo, and we feel that that could be when that happened. It could be something else, but just the word slaughtered made us think it would have been a time, maybe Indians would have been there, which would have been in the late 1700s. It was not like a presence current. It was like something that happened long ago before the house was there. There were some other things in the basement that we heard that I can't talk about, unfortunately, because we don't want anybody to, try to break into the house. We want to respect the house and how it is. But there were a lot of interesting comments that were made. Most everything was friendly as far as comments, until towards the end when we were doing the last session in the basement. They kept saying, get out now, go away, get out. So you know what we did? We got out. Next, we kind of looked at the names and stuff as they were going through all these tapes. There were several names of staff members that were there, and also the people that were ghost hunting that night, they were talked about. So I haven't gotten all the recordings back yet to hear what actually was said, but I do know that all our names were mentioned. Along with a couple staff members that work there. There's a Judith that was talked about, and Judy Doty used to work there before she passed away. There's a Patrick that's mentioned. There's a Lori, and we have a Laura that works there, and I asked her if anybody ever calls her Lori, and she said her family does. So, that's a possibility. We also have some unusual names, like Pablo that cropped up, Pete, Stacy, kind of some unusual names for the time. We have Caitlin, Isaac, Nick. Some of these we have not been able to attribute to the family, whether they were kids. They could have been students that William Earl knew from teaching, quite possibly. Also, there was somebody who said he was the butler that talked. There was a little girl that had a lot of giggles in her, and her name was Maggie. We finally got that out. There were also members of the family, Tom, Walter, Earl. Those were all family names. Now, it was unusual that there was a Mildred, and I cannot place a Mildred for anything, but my mom had passed away really not long before we were ghost hunting. So, you never know whether it was somebody that was attached to the house, or was it somebody that was with me that was trying to communicate with me. Unless we go back, I guess we'll never know. But there was an interesting Southern accent that was there, and an interesting British accent. So, not quite sure who these people were, but the Edwards family did travel a lot. So, it's a possibility maybe it was somebody in their travels. Also, they talked about traveling. India was brought up. So some of the travels that perhaps the family did, the places were mentioned. It was really interesting. So we found it very odd that all through the night, we had lots of trouble with batteries. So some presence was there that was draining the energy, or maybe they were using the energy in the batteries to communicate with us. They did say that they got a lot of good audio footage. So, I can't wait to get a listen to that. I've heard bits and pieces. But at the end of the night, after my coworker was like, well, if you do this again, I'm not going to go. But we have had somebody who has greatly stepped up and said that they would be more than happy to join me if we get to go ghost hunting in the Leipsic library again. So the end of the night, we helped them gather up all the equipment. At the end, we also ended it with a prayer where everyone held hands, just thinking that we were safe through this whole adventure, and that we asked that the ghosts please stay there and don't come home with us. I hope you've enjoyed a look at the ghostly happenings at the Leipsic Library. Till later. Bye.